Thank you for the introduction. I'm Yen Lin. I am an incoming PhD student at Carnegie Mellon University, and I'm presenting my work, Data Safety versus App Privacy, Comparing the Usability of Android and iOS Privacy Labels. So in December 2020, Apple introduced app privacy labels in its App Store in order to explain detailed privacy information in a succinct format. And about 2 years later, in July 2020, Google introduced mandatory data safety labels. So there have been several studies that investigated the usability of iOS labels, but no prior study had examined the usability of Android data safety labels. In this work, we evaluated the usability of Android data safety labels and studied how design differences between Android and iOS labels affect user comprehension and perceptions of the labels. So both iOS and Android labels aim to enhance transparency about mobile app data use practices, but the designs and the terminologies they use are very different. In our study, we've identified 5 key design differences, which I'm going to go over here. So the first difference we identify is the location and formatting of links. On the compact labels, which is the initial label interface users see when they go to the App Store, both Android and iOS labels provide a See Details link that directs users to the expanded label. So this link appears at the bottom of the Android labels and appears at the top right corner of the iOS labels. Additionally, iOS labels also provide a link to the developer's privacy policy and a Learn More link that provides more app privacy information. Another difference we identified was in how data were categorized. So in the compact labels, Android labels have 2 data collection groups, data shared and data collected. This is a zoomed in view, and iOS labels have 3 groups, data used to track you, data linked to you, and data not linked to you. The representation of empty collection groups was also different. So when there's no data shared with third parties or no data collected, Android labels explicitly state no data shared or no data collected, while the iOS labels would simply omit those data collection groups. And for specific data type categories that were collected, Android compact labels only show a subset of all data type categories. So here you can see that it shows the first 2 data type categories with plus and others if there are 4 or more data type categories. But iOS labels show all data type categories with little icons next to them. For the expanded version of the labels, there were 2 main information provided. So first was what data types were collected, and second was for what purposes they were collected. The Android interface presents a data-centric view. As you can see here, so what I circle in red are collection purposes, and on the iOS labels, the data type categories were listed under collection purposes, where the collection purposes were listed under specific data type categories on the Android labels. Lastly, Android labels also include information about an app's security practices, and this includes if this app has been encrypting data in transit, if it allows you to delete your data from the app, whether the app has gone through an independent security review and its compliance with Play Family's policy if it's an app for kids. And there's no analogous information provided in iOS labels. In this study, we recruited a diverse group of US participants through the crowd worker platform Prolific. We conducted 24 semi-structured 1-hour-long interviews with 12 Android and 12 iOS users. During the study, we asked them to review privacy labels on their phones for 3 different mobile apps, Just Dance Now, Google Maps, and Tumblr, while responding to our prompts. We asked them questions to assess their prior awareness of privacy labels and observed how they interacted with both the compact and expanded labels. We also asked them to define some of the terms they saw on the labels, and in the end, we asked for their overall impressions of the labels. And now I'm going to share a few highlights from our results, but you're welcome to read the full paper to learn more. Like I mentioned previously, in the compact labels, Android abbreviated long lists of data type categories, while iOS labels omit empty data collection groups. So when we asked Android users if they wanted additional information or if they found any information on the compact labels confusing, several of them mentioned the omission of data type categories. For example, participant A said, "I'd like to know the 9 other data types they're collecting." And to evaluate if iOS users understood the emission of data collection groups on the compact label, we asked them to look at the label on the right, and we asked if they believed the app was collecting data that were used to track them or collected data that were not linked to them. Almost all users thought that this app was collecting data that were used to track them, and half of them thought that this app was collecting data not linked to them. In particular, participant IA suggested adding a clear bold statement that specifically says no other data is being collected to the compact label. We also found that data use purposes were really hard to find for Android users. So in order to access information about for what purposes a data type was collected, Android users need to first click on the See Details link on the compact label to see the expanded label, and then click on these individual chevron symbols next to a specific data type category to see the accordion interface that shows them the data collection purposes. We wanted to know if this design was intuitive and if Android users actually understood what those collection purposes were for. We asked them to look at this expanded label and identify any data types used for advertising or marketing purposes. And only 1 out of 12 Android users responded to our question correctly. The remaining participants did not know where to locate this information. This suggests that data use purposes were difficult to locate and not easily understood by users. Similarly, we also asked iOS users to look at this label on the right, and we asked them to explain what analytics, product personalization, and app functionality were for, but only half of the iOS users were able to correctly identify them as collection purposes. We also had a couple interesting results about security practices. When we conducted our interviews, Tumblr's Android labels show data cannot be deleted from the app, and it was highly salient to our users. Participant A3 said, "I definitely don't like the last point with data can't be deleted." Data deletion was understood by almost all of our users. And when we asked if they would be less likely to download an app without data deletion options, almost all Android and iOS users said yes. There was one user who said that they would still download the app, but it's definitely going to affect how much they would use the app. Participant I7 said, "I would probably still use it to view others' posts, but wouldn't post anything myself." And iOS users wanted this information added to the iOS labels. Similarly, with independent security review, it was highly salient with our users. All participants noticed it, and most users understood what it referred to. So Android users found this independent security review information extremely helpful, and some of them said that there might be risks in downloading an app without an independent security review. We also asked iOS users if they would feel more confident in using an app that had been independently security reviewed, and most of them answered positively to the question. However, a major concern among both the Android and iOS users was the neutrality of an independent third party. And one of our users mentioned that their confidence in the app would be much higher if the term independent truly implied a third party with no affiliations. So specifically, participant A said, "It makes me feel like it's safer. Whether or not that's true is another story. And if a company doesn't have it now, and now I know that it exists, why don't they have that?" So based on the findings, we've made a few recommendations. We recommend that privacy labels use clear, concise design elements to convey critical information about data practices. Existing designs made it hard for users to find and understand data use purposes, and we think that a more intuitive label format would help users learn about what information is collected and the purpose that information is used for. Privacy labels should also explicitly include apps and data collection groups, and also include information about security practices. Future work should also explore if there are other security practices that should be included in the privacy labels and how to express them in a way that users can understand. Yeah, thank you. This will be my talk.
Question over there. The mic is coming.
Hiya, thanks for the talk. It's a really important and interesting area. I have a question about your finding around data deletion. So obviously the safety label says, let's say, you know, there isn't an option for your data to be deleted. Is there any indication that participants distinguished between deletion on the front end and on the back end, as it's kind of understood through, say, GDPR is the right to be forgotten? Because obviously there's a difference between a user, you know, say making a post on Tumblr and then just deleting it and it's hidden from view, but that's kind of different from it being erased and deleted on the back end. So is there any possibility that users might have conflated the two and kind of assumed that there's just absolutely no way to delete anything on the front end, when in actual fact the label refers to more the right to be forgotten and erasure, if that makes sense?
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. So when we asked users to look at the compact and expanded labels of Tumblr, obviously it was like really salient to them that data can't be deleted. And as a follow-up question, we also asked if they believe this data deletion would be a soft deletion or a permanent deletion. And the responses that we got were kind of like split between the two. But we did not distinguish, like we did not ask anything about like whether it would be a back end or a front end deletion. Most of them mention things regarding that they would hope that it would be a permanent deletion, and once they request their data be deleted from the app, like the company should no longer withhold their personal information in any circumstances. But again, like there's no way for users to access that information by just looking at the privacy labels. Yeah.
Question, did any of the participants use Tumblr or any of the apps?
So before we let them like look at the privacy label of the 3 apps, we asked them about whether they have used the app in the past, or if they have, how often they've used it. But to our surprise, like not that many users have used Tumblr. I don't think any of our users actually used Tumblr in the past, but I think some of them knew about Tumblr. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks for your talk. So acknowledging that developers are actually the ones who give this information in the first place for both of them, was there any questions that you asked your users in regards to trust about whether or not the statements are actually true? There's a lot of presentations around, in this conference about verifying the validity of some of the claims of app developers and looking at like network traffic, but I'm curious if you addressed that at all in terms of, do people trust that the things that are said by the developers are actually true?
Yeah, during our interviews, we asked users about who they believe created this app, the labels, and I believe like 16 out of 24 participants answered the question correctly and believe that the developers created the labels. And yeah, a lot of our users expressed skepticism towards the accuracy of those labels. And consistent with prior work, we found, like prior work has found inconsistency between the actual data practices and the privacy labels. So we also made a recommendation in our paper that app stores should automatically verify privacy labels. Yeah, but you can read more about this in the paper. Yeah, thank you for the question.
Yeah, there was another one.
Oh.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, thanks for the talk. Just a question about one of your recommendations, which is about essentially adding more details to these privacy reports. And I would agree, I would want it to be as complete as possible. I'm just curious if your user in your studies expressed some feelings about the length of this. I would expect them that you put them in a situation where they need to read this thoroughly, but perhaps common users just want to have a skim at what's most important. And I get that it's kind of difficult to get this right, but I was curious if folks felt these were too long, too short, too detailed, something like this. Thanks.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for your question. So like I mentioned previously, Android labels abbreviated long lists of data type categories on the compact labels, and a lot of our users were concerned about whether they were being truthful about what types of data they were collecting, and if the companies were trying to hide something really important from them, because a lot of users weren't even aware of the privacy labels, and they wouldn't really click on the see details link to be directed to the expanded label. And we also asked a follow-up question regarding, what kind of data types do you care about most? And a lot of our users mentioned location, personal information, and financial info, which is what most of Android labels put on the compact labels. But this could be due to the fact that they were already seeing these data type categories on the compact labels. So I think having more like iterative user studies on this will be really helpful.
I see, thanks.
We can take a really quick one, a last really quick one.
Hi. Yeah. Sort of similar topic follow-up, because a lot of the recommendations and the findings of we want more information or more clarity. Were there any instances of information which is either like this information is irrelevant or this is too much and we'd like to see less of it?
I can't recall on the top of my head if any users said that they would want less information, but we saw that, for example, for Just Dance Now, which is a dancing app, they saw on the compact label that this app was actually collecting their location information. But when they go to the expanded label, the app was collecting only their course location, not like exact location. So when users saw that, they felt this information was helpful. And like having seen the expanded label was actually like more helpful than what was being displayed on the compact label. Yeah, but there were a couple data type categories that were really confusing to our users, such as like analytics or like user content. Yeah, but yeah, there's more about this in the paper. Thank you.
Thank you. A warm applause for Yanzi.